Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man! Jeremy Corbyn!
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Prime Minister rather belatedly acknowledged there's a housing crisis in Britain. He announced a £140 million fund to transform 100 housing estates around the country, which actually amounts to 1.4 million per housing estate, to bulldoze and then rebuild. And my maths is perfect. This money, Mr. Speaker, is a drop in the ocean. It isn't even going to pay for the bulldozers, is it?
What we have done is doubled the housing budget and going to be investing over £8 billion in housing. And that comes after having built 700,000 homes since becoming Prime Minister. We've got over 250,000 more affordable homes. And here's a statistic he will like. In the last Parliament, we built more council houses than in 13 years of a Labour government.
Well, Mr. Speaker, he hasn't clearly thought this thing through very carefully, because in every estate that he announces he wishes to bulldoze will include tenants and people that have bought their homes under right to buy. Will those people, the leaseholders, will they be guaranteed homes on those rebuilt estates that he's proposing to do?
Look, of course, I accept this isn't as carefully thought through as his reshuffle. Which I gather it's still going on. It hasn't actually finished yet. Of course, what we want to do is go to communities where there are sink estates and housing estates that have held people back, and agree with those local councils, agree with those local people, and make sure that tenants get good homes, make sure homeowners get rehoused in new houses. That's exactly what we want. Now look at what we've done on housing. We reformed the planning rules. They opposed them. We introduced Help to Buy. They opposed it. We introduced Help to Save to help people get that deposit. They opposed it. They've got absolutely nothing to say about people trapped in housing estates who want a better start in their life.
Mr. Speaker, I noticed the Prime Minister did not give any guarantee to leaseholders on estates. And so there is another, probably larger group on most estates that I have a question to ask him on behalf of. A tenant by the name of Darryl, who says, will the Prime Minister guarantee that all existing tenants of the council estates earmarked for redevelopment will be rehoused in new council housing in their current communities with the same tenancy conditions as they currently have?
We're not going to be able to deal with these sink estates unless we get the agreement of tenants, unless we show how we're going to support homeowners, unless we show how we're going to support communities. But isn't it interesting, Mr. Speaker? Isn't it interesting, Mr. Speaker? Who here is the small c Conservative who's saying to people, stay stuck in your sink estates, have nothing better than what Labour gave you after the war? We're saying, if you're a tenant, have the right to buy. If you want to buy a home, here's Help to Save. If you're in a sink estate, we'll help you out. And that's the fact of politics today. A party on this side of the House that wants to give people life chances, and a Labour opposition that says stay stuck in poverty.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister doesn't seem to understand the very serious concerns that council tenants have when they feel they're going to be forced away from the community where they live, where their children go to school, and their community is so strong. But there is another area where the Prime Minister might be able to help us today. His party's manifesto said everyone who works hard should be able to own a home of their own. So will families earning his so-called national living wage be able to afford one of his discount starter homes?
I very much hope they will, because we're also, as well as starter homes, we're having shared ownership homes. And so if you take, when I became Prime Minister, a young person trying to buy a home needed £30,000 for that deposit.
From Meccano to Legoland, here they come with a brick in their hand. Men with heads filled up with sand. It's bad.
Order, I apologise for interrupting. There is now... Order, I say to the Honourable Lady, the member for Bishop Auckland, who aspires to be a stateswoman, that is not the behaviour of a would-be stateswoman. Shrill shrieking from a sedentary position. I want to hear the Prime Minister's answer.
When you became Prime Minister, you needed £30,000 to buy for a deposit on a typical home. Because of the schemes we've introduced, that is now down to £10,000. Now, I want people to own their own homes, so let's consider this issue. We are saying to the 1.3 million tenants of housing associations, we're on your side, you can buy your own home. Why does he still oppose that?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I hope this word hope goes a long way, because research by Shelter found that families on his so-called living wage will be unable to afford the average starter home in 98% of local authority areas in England. So there's only the 2% that may benefit from this. So instead of building more affordable homes, isn't the Prime Minister branding more homes as affordable, which is not a solution to the housing crisis? Will he confirm that home ownership has actually fallen since he became Prime Minister?
There is a challenge of helping people to buy their own homes. That's what Help to Buy was about, which they opposed. That's what Help to Save is about, which they oppose. And that is why, isn't it interesting? He didn't answer the question about the 1.3 million housing association tenants. No. I want what's best for everybody. Let's put it like this, Mr. Speaker. He owns his home. I own my home. Why won't we let those 1.3 million own their homes? Why not? What are you frightened of?
The Prime Minister... When the noise disappeared.
The leader of the opposition will be heard. Jeremy Corbyn.
I thank the Conservative backbenchers for their deep concern for the housing crisis in this country. It is noted. The Prime Minister gave no assurances to tenants, no assurances to leaseholders, no assurances to low-paid people who want to get somewhere decent to live. Can I ask him one final question on this? And it's a practical question that is faced by many people all around this country who are deeply worried about their own housing situation and how they're going to live in the future. It comes from Linda, who's a council tenant for the last 25 years. And she says, I will eventually look to downsize to a property suitable for our ageing circumstances. Due to the housing bill being put through Parliament at present, if we downsize, we will have to sign a new tenancy agreement. If we stay, we face having to pay the bedroom tax and debt. If we downsize, we lose our secure home. It's a real problem that Linda and many like her are facing. If she was in the Prime Minister's Advice Bureau, what advice would he give her?
Well, the first thing I'd say to Linda is, of course, we are cutting social rents in this Parliament, so she will be paying less in rent. The second thing I'd say is, if she's concerned about the spare room subsidy, of course, it's not paid by pensioners, a point that he fails to make. The other point I would make to Linda, and all those who are in council houses or in housing association homes, is that we believe in giving you the chance to buy your own home and are helping you to do that. And isn't it interesting, Mr. Speaker, what this exchange has shown? We've now got a Labour Party who've got a housing policy that doesn't support home ownership, just as they've got a defence policy that doesn't believe in defence. Just as we've now got a Labour Party that doesn't believe in work and a Labour leader who doesn't believe in Britain.
Order.
Prime Minister's questions comes to an end. Certain surprise that Mr. Corbyn did not go on the junior doctor strike. The doctor strike happened yesterday. There's another one coming up, but instead chose to go on housing. Obviously, still a very important subject, given the housing shortage and the difficulty people have of trying to buy houses these days. And he concentrated on the Prime Minister's plan, which he announced at the weekend, to essentially bulldoze 100 what are called sink estates and replace them. And Mr. Corbyn wanted to know some of the details of that, in particular, what would happen to the folks who currently live there. It was an exchange on generalities. Mr. Cameron, not for the first time, not quite answering on the detailed side of things. We'll come to that in a minute. Let's find out what you made of it, Joko.
Yes, responses on housing. Martin Bristow, Wolverhampton, said a fascinating exchange between Cameron and Corbyn, which speaks to the real differences between the two. One party wants to speak for aspiration and the other desires a client state in which people cannot raise themselves from dependency. But Joe Moore says, judging from David Cameron's attitude as regards residents of social housing on council estates, I get the impression that they are social rejects, in his opinion. James Dean, with an E, opposition leader long on housing problems but very short on solution. Peter Kane, though, in the Wirral, a much stronger performance by Corbyn. Cameron struggled with the detail, as you were saying, Andrew, when pressed on housing, had to revert to his pre-scripted insults. And this from Andrew Roper, Corbyn off his game. Not going with junior doctor strike, was missing an open goal. Going on housing and not getting it right saw him demolished, to coin a phrase.
Well, housing and the junior doctor strike are two vital issues for the country. I'm just slightly surprised that Mr. Corbyn didn't split. He's got 6 questions. He could have done 3 or 2, even on the junior doctor strike, is the news, and then moved on to housing. That did surprise me.
That did surprise me. It's not a surprise that he went on housing, because we know that's an issue where has passionate beliefs on. It was an issue that found a lot of favour with his supporters. He's very clear that he wants to stand up for people who are in council housing. But like you, I would have expected that he would have at least split them, because the junior doctors event is such a difficulty for the government and also such a big issue and concern.
And ongoing.
And ongoing. And also the Labour leadership have taken a stronger position on this strike than previous Labour leaderships, where people have sort of said, yeah, well, we support the right to action, we see the concerns, but haven't quite, as you were asking John earlier, he wasn't quite happy to completely commit there, asking whether or not it was right for Labour's leadership to commit to this strike and back it in the kind of way that they have. So surprising there. But I understand that there was a bit of a split, maybe not quite as dramatic as a split yesterday, but interesting and worth noting. The Shadow Health Secretary, Heidi Alexander, did not go to any picket lines yesterday, while John McDonnell and some other frontbenchers did.
Slow, slow, quick, quick, quick. It's wall to wall and brick to brick. They work so fast, it makes you sick. It's bad.
That's all, folks.